I'm Tony, and today we're going to make a fabric bowl out of jelly roll strips, 2.5-inch strips. Now you can use existing jelly roll strips or just grab a whole bunch of your scraps, cut them into 2.5-inch pieces, sew them all together. I will show you step by step how to make this easy bowl, and trust me, if you can sew a straight-ish line, you can do it. The materials you need in order to make a really cool fabric basket are, of course, these strips. I already have 5 2.5-inch strips already cut in this yummy, yummy island batik fabric that was designed by Tamarini's. And you also need your batting strips. Now, I'm going to be referring to some things a lot from this pattern. We're not going to be making a jelly roll rug. However, there's a lot of the same tips and tricks and things. So there's even more information in this pattern. So if you haven't picked up this jelly roll rug pattern yet, go take a look at that. The link is down below in the video where you can find it. So I have the 2.5-inch strips. You can use regular batting. I personally like to use the fusible batting from Hobbs. It's really cool because you can iron it into place, and I'll show you really quickly how to do that. But the method that I'm going to show you using the next thing, which is the Clover Fabric Tube Maker, if you're using this, you don't need the fusible batting. It just makes it a lot easier. But I will show you all the steps, whether you're using the fusible batting or not, and whether you're using the tube maker or not, how to use it with and without that. But I recommend both of these to make your life just a little bit easier. So and of course your thread. The thread completely depends upon if you want everything to show. So I'm using, like I said, some greens and blues, the yummy fabrics. So I really like this nice bright green thread. I think it's going to look really good against that. For example, here's how it would look in this case, where I have some standard florals, but I used black thread, so it's easy to see all those stitches. And I'll get into a little bit more with this thread in this example a little bit later. But do you want to see your stitches? Do you not want to see your stitches? Completely up to you. So we're going to see how it looks with some nice, cool, matchy kind of thread. Now, the number of strips you need completely depends upon how big you want your bowl. For example, the large jelly roll rug takes one jelly roll, an entire jelly roll. Well, a jelly roll is 40 strips of 2.5 inches. This is just 5. So depending upon how big you want your bowl, how small you want your bowl, do as many strips as you want. If you just want to take a whole jelly roll, put it together, and just make a bunch of bowls, you can do that as well. So the first step is to assemble all of these fabrics. Now, whenever you sew these fabrics together, you want to make sure to sew them together using a 45-inch seam. So we're going to sew these together with a 45-inch seam so they go together just like that. You do not want to sew them together end over end. It will actually weaken this point right here, and your basket may not last as long as you want. So please make sure whenever you're assembling them to do them at a 45-degree angle, just like if you were making binding. Now, if you don't know how to make a 45-degree angle for sewing strips together, I have linked my video down below for the how to make binding. So take a look at that video, and of course the timestamps are there that you can skip over to actually how to sew this all together for that step. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these together, skip ahead, I'll come back and I will show you my finished strip in order to get that batting ironed on. Let's talk batting. So like I said, there are 2 options. You have the fusible batting from Hobbs, or you can cut your own batting strips. If you decide to cut your own batting strips, make sure they are 2¼ inches wide. And that is how wide this is. You notice how it's just a little bit shorter than our 2.5-inch fabric strip. Great. So now what we want to do is we want to iron this on if we're using the fusible. The only problem with that is it is double-sided fusible. If you were to take your iron and set it on here just like this, you're going to melt the fusible to the iron, and you don't want to do that. If you don't have the awesome Clover fabric tube maker, at this point what you do is you fold it in half to see that crease right there, and you just take both ends and you fold them in, and you do that all the way down and then iron it as you're going. In this case, I'm going to use the first part of my fabric tube maker in order to iron this. If you're not using the fusible batting, then at this point you can just take this right to the sewing machine. So let me show you the, it takes a moment to snap this out. So there are 4 pieces to this. And easiest way is to push out, just like that. So there's 4 pieces. What you want to do is, yes, you do want to make sure you open this up. Don't try to shove it in there without this open. So we're going to take this and we're going to put this in here just like that. Now when I reach this point right here, that's whenever I take this one here and I push it in and then snap it into place. Make sure you hear that snap or else it is not in there. Let's make sure I've got that in there all the way. Come on. Go in there. There we are. And you see it's coming out right there. So now, let's take this and snap. There we are. You heard that nice little snap. And then I just pull it from here and I have my tube ready to go. I am going to iron this just to secure it in place. There we are. Now, from here, if you do not have the fusible, you want to be doing this at your sewing machine, and you take this end through here just like this, snap this in until it's snapped, and then you're going to be turning this onto your sewing machine and pulling through. So now you can just take this and pull this straight through to your sewing machine and sew it just like that. So you've got both of those. Now of course it's not going to work because I don't have this snapped in because I'm not going to do that right away. That is only if you do not have the fusible batting. If you have regular batting, you don't want to make this tube and then do the second half like I'm going to show you with the fusible. You want to do it all in the same time. So if you take a look at the picture that's on the front of the packaging, you see how they do, it's a yellow tube, and they do the one right after the other into the sewing machine. With the fusible, I like the fusible because it's not going to go anywhere as I do it. I am going to make my first tube right here on my ironing board where I'm just doing this. You see how it's coming out? And then I'm ironing it right away. Just like this. There we are. And bringing that out. And then after I finish this entire tube, we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll finish sewing this closed. But I'll show you how to do that one. So I'm going to finish making this tube all the way down, and then we'll go to the sewing machine. I'll show you the second step. For this, like I said, if you're not using fusible, then just skip this step of ironing, go right to the machine and do both steps. As I was ironing along, I realized I forgot to mention, do not use any kind of steam when you're doing this. So if you're doing the fusible batting and you're going along and adding this in here, do not put steam on your iron. In fact, the packaging for the Hobbs batting specifically says do not use steam. And the reason is it's water soluble. So the fusing is water soluble, so it's not going to be sticky after you make this, after you wash it. When using any kind of fusible item, always look at it. Some of them like steam, some of them don't. Always read the instructions. At this stage, if you don't have the fabric tube maker, what you want to do is take your batting and fabric, fold it in half, and then sew along the edge right here in order to close it. Now, if you have the fabric tube maker and you don't have the fusible batting, it's going to be coming out just like this. So at this point, we put this into here. So it starts to come out. To make sure that's lined up perfectly right there. We're taking this part here and snapping it in just like that. Now, if you've already made your tube here, you don't need this part. I'm going to keep this on just to show, just in case, if you don't have any fusible, if you haven't done this. And then what you want to do is turn this onto the side, and you notice how I have my leader ender for chain piecing, and I'm going to set that in just like that. And all I'm doing is pulling this down and sewing along. Now you notice how it's just going all on its own. I don't have to worry about folding this as I'm going. It's just a much easier, much faster method. And as I finish, as you see, the stitches are nice. It's right there, and then I have my nice tube. So I'm going to finish sewing my entire 5 strips into a nice tube like this, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to actually start assembling your bowl/basket. Before we get into the actual sewing, let's talk about the zigzag stitch, because that's the stitch that we're going to use to assemble everything. You notice how in my first basket I have a whole lot of skipped stitches all throughout there, and that's why I used the black thread, so I could really see every single one of the stitches as I was doing it. The reason behind that is I have a very inexpensive machine. It is not a heavy-duty machine at all. And so the more layers and thickness that you have into this machine, the harder it is for the machine, so it's going to skip some stitches. In fact, I have another machine that it wouldn't even do a zigzag stitch. It only would do a straight stitch, which is really weird. So as I was doing the zigzag, it would only straight stitch around until I realized that that machine just couldn't handle it. There are some tips and tricks that you can use in order to help this. I'm using a jeans needle, so it's going to be able to go through a couple of different layers. And I'm going to make sure that my zigzag stitch is on a wide setting. So I'm choosing my zigzag stitch, and in my zigzag stitch, I'm increasing the width all the way out to a 6. And that's going to be easier in order to sew it together of how I am doing that. I'm also increasing the length of my zigzag stitch to a 1.6. So a width of 6, a length of 1.6, and I'm using a jeans needle. I'm also using my J-foot, which gives it a little bit extra cushion in there. You can also use you could also use a quilting foot, walking foot, that's what it is. You could also use a walking foot in order to really help bounce through those layers. But if you have a heavy-duty machine, I highly recommend that you use that. Now to get the bowl started. The first thing you want to do is figure out how wide you want to make this. And that's what's going to determine how far down you start. Now in the Jelly Roll rug, it actually gives you a measurement in the pattern of where to start. But for the bowls, baskets, it's really up to you. So I'm going to take a look at this one, and I kind of like the width that I have now here. So I'm going to figure out about right there. So that is that's how wide I want my basket. Whenever you figure out how wide you want your basket, take your tube and then fold it over, just like that. And you want to make sure when you fold this over that you're folding it over towards the outside whenever you're sewing this down. And then you're going around. Oops, let me actually flip it the other way. I want to make sure that whenever I go towards the outside, that my seam is also facing on the outside. And that is why whenever I come around this corner right here, whoops, let me go up here so you can see it. When I'm coming around this corner right here and I'm doing this, these seams are now facing each other for this first row. And then as I'm going around my basket, you see how it's got the nice finished edge on the outside and not the seam. So that's why we want to do that. So fold this to the left and fold it so the seams are facing the left. All right, and let's get sewing. So we want to go ahead and put this under here. There we are, and down. Now all I'm doing is I've got them lined up and I'm doing a zigzag stitch. Now I'm going to go slow at first just to make sure that the zigzag stitch is working, and it is. You can go as slow or as fast as you feel comfortable, but make sure you're holding together your 2 rows of your tubes so that it can sew. Is it? Yep, and I am skipping stitches, so I will show you in a moment as I'm coming around. Now when you get to the corner, what you want to do is slowly pick this up and kind of turn this around a little bit. And then kind of wiggle it around. It gets easier as you go along, but those first couple of turns are going to be a little difficult. And then I'm going to turn this around again. And now, remember, I've got my 2 seams facing each other so that the edge of my bowl is out there. There you are. Now, you see how I do have some skip stitches. Again, it's because my machine is not a heavy-duty machine. If you are super, super worried about those, you would need to get a nice heavy-duty machine in order to do that. Any machine that you could do bags on would be fine, or anything like that. So now at this point, I'm going to go around just like if I was doing a jelly roll rug, for a couple of turns where I'm going to try to keep this as flat as possible, and that's going to be my base. Alright, I think I like this for my base. Now you notice how for my last one, I only did 2 before I started coming out. I decided for this one I wanted my base a little bit wider in order to have it flatter. I also want to show you what I did right here. So I noticed as I was coming through here, it was starting to separate. And it wasn't actually touching each other. So what I did is I actually backed up my my sewing machine and then I re-sewed that area. So as you can see, it's kind of like, you know what? It gives a character. This is not going to be judged. This is going to be fun, right? This is a fun thing. So now, as I'm coming around this turn, I want to start having the bowl and not the rug. So what I want to do, as I'm sewing here, I want to start lifting this up. And I'm going to be lifting this up as I'm coming around the corner. And as I'm sewing it, that's all you're doing. It's all you're doing is lifting this part up right here. Now, the reason why I showed you this is how you fold it and this is how you do it. If you had it over here, it'd be easier for you guys to see. However, it's in my little machine right here. It's in my throat area. You want to have the bowl itself outside here, not in the throat area, so it's easier to lift up and move as you come around. So I'll show you for a few passes. And of course, as you're going around turns, it's getting a little easier to do it. And around the turn. Now you can see right here, you see how it's already starting to come up from the bowl? That is just from me turning it and holding it up as you go along. And that's how you make the bowl. I've almost got my basket finished. Ooh, look at all of that. How cool. I just realized how it looks on the outside with all of that layering on there. That is super cool. Now, if you don't want this showing on the outside, if you want this maybe on the inside, well then I'll show you how you can play around with that in a quick second. But anyways, we're going to finish this off. We're going to end this. So what I do is I always take the ending right here and I kind of fold the end in, because we want to make sure that this is not the, so I actually went inside and I cut out some of the batting so it's just fabric here. So if you have a huge line and you're like, this is the end of it, and you trim it, go in there and cut out some of that batting, and then re-sew this up a little bit if you want. And then what you want to do is fold this fabric over here and then kind of twist it over a little bit like this. And we're going to bring this in onto the inside. So let me show you how I do it. So we're just sewing this in here. Whoops, you can't really see that, sorry. Let me flatten this out so you can see it. So we're sewing my last bit, and then I'm taking my folded area, and I'm just bringing it down. Let me fold this in, and then down, just like that. And then, once I get to this area here, you see how I'm just making sure that I sew completely over that end piece. Just like that. And then I'm going to back it up a bit just to make sure that I'm getting all of those stitches in there nice and it's not going to come undone. There we are. And then let's pull this out and trim it. Now, remember how I said that I've got this? As I was sewing it, I was actually taking my inside piece and layering it over the outside piece. If you want all of these edges on the inside, take this piece, layer it over top of that, or just take your whole bowl, it's fabric, and flip it inside out. And now you've got all those pretty stitches on the outside and all of the layering on the inside. Oh, look, I've got a little hole right there. Okay, so how you fix those holes? I'm just going to make this nice and flat. Let's bring this into here. Where's my hole? There's my hole. I apparently missed that a little bit. And we're going to add some more character with our stitches. And you just sew it again. And pull it. And trim. This is the hard part, getting it back out again. Ish. There we are. And trim. And now, oh look, there's no more hole in there. And that's it. And now I have my nice fabric bowl. So now I'm going to go back through because I did have a lot of starts and stops. So I've got some loose threads in here. So I'm going to clean my threads up and then we'll take a look at the bowl. And that's my fabric bowl. That's it. Isn't that cool? With all the different colors and textures, and it's fabric, so it's manipulative. You can turn it. Remember how I said I wanted a larger base than this one, and I showed you how I did that by just creating more. Well, let's say if you don't want an oval size. Let's say if you want a circular one. Well, in that case, make the center shorter and just go around more circular. Make a flatter base before you lift it up to start going around the edges. So hopefully you learned how to make a fabric bowl / basket. Now, the basket part, if you want to put a handle on there, we'll just take part of the tube, attach it to here, and bring it over to there, and now you have a handle for a basket. Just as easy as that. So hopefully you learned some stuff today, how to make a fabric bowl basket. Don't forget to like my YouTube. Well, follow me here on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I live stream on Twitch. Sometimes I live stream on YouTube. I also have my Quite Nerdy Quilters Facebook group, so come join us over there. All the links are down below. Sometimes a TikTok, not really often, but sometimes it may start in the future. I don't know. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.